We actually have a super heavy Samurai Ghoti deck. Say that 10 times fast. We have some Fallen of Albaz, some super heavy Samurai good stuff, some Purrely, and just kind of taking a look at the general new power level of the meta. I'm big 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out more awesome content. Now this is, when I saw this, and I saw that this went 5-0 at its event, I had to do a double take here and go, we really have reached peak evolution out here, as this definitely showcases some of the best ideas being brought together. I mean, little fishies with, best universal pendulum scales you could ever actually wish for. Yeah, it is pretty interesting just to see, what lines that you can cross and actually have make work. Also, being able to pendulum summon technically the Quillcanth, right? Because it is level 7. Okay, so we have triple copies of Snopius, 2 copies of Schiff, 2 copies of Paces, 2 Zep, you have the 1 Ixip with triple Lifeless, and then, of course, 2 Quillcanth, 1 Butoniful Princess, triple Gamma with 1 Driver, and then we have triple Ghost Ogre, triple copies of Wakashi, your triple Bike, 1 Big Benki with triple copies of the Soul Piercer, 1 Scales with the 1 Soul Claw, 1 Soul Peacemaker, 1 Wagon, 1 Regulus, and then, of course, we have 2 copies of the Deep Sea Trench. That is the only spell in our entire deck. We have 2 copies of Scarecrow, 1 copy of Genius, 1 Appo with 1 Dugaris, 1 Changying with 1 Borreload Savage, 1 Baron, 1 Excel Synchro, 2 copies of Ascan, 2 copies of Arampius, and 2 Ghoti of the Deep Beyond. Then we have 1 Jerusalem with 2 Magna Hut, triple Dimension Shifter with triple Droll, triple Spooky Dogwood, and triple copies of Space Rock here. Wrapping up, by far one of the most interesting developments that I have seen out here. I knew like the universal pendulum scales were busted. I didn't think we'd be putting them in Ghoti to be able to, capitalize with Quillcanth here. Like, that's amazing. Next up is Fallen of Albaz, good stuff, sporting off. Where is it? There is Albion, the Incandescent Dragon. This build did not have Quem. Duelists said that it didn't really, it would have been nice if they had gotten it, but being able to have access to the Albion definitely helped out a lot of the build. So kind of keep that in mind. Like, this is going to be like the good power card that's really going to kind of matter here at the end of the day. So we have triple copies of Fallen of Albaz, triple copies of a Looper. We have 1 Blazing Cartesia with 1 Albion, 1 copy of Spriggan's Kit with 1 Mercurier. We have 1 Ad Lidium with 1 Tragedy, 1 Saronir with 1 Bicilubillium. We have 1 Dark Magician, triple copies of Ash Blossom. And then, of course, triple copies of Branded Fusion with 1 Expulsion, 1 Retribution with 1 Branded in Red. We got the 1 Branded in White, 1 Branded Loss with triple Branded Opening. Got triple Fusion Deployment with 1 Called by the Grave, triple Crossout Designator with 1 Gold Sark. Got the 1 Foolish Barrel with triple Super Poly. We have 2 Nidier Servant, and we have 1 Branded in High Spirits. And then we have the 1 Albion, 1 Mud with 1 Garuda, 1 Sprint with 1 Dark Dragoon. We have 1 Guardian Chimera with 1 Queritus, 1 Gongondala, your 1 Titanicloud with 1 Rinbroom, and of course 2 Lubellion, 1 Mirror Jade, and 2 copies of Albion. Then we got triple Draw and Lockbird here, triple copies of Space Rock, triple copies of Thunder King, and then of course 1 Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, 1 Jinsno, and then we got 1 triple Thrust, triple evenly matched here. Wrapping up some interesting Fallen of Albaz developments for you here. This will kind of start to steer you in the right direction as we see this deck begin to undergo its next level of evolution as we head on in to this set. And I think that's actually kind of cool to really see some of the expectations people are sitting out here. Next up is Super Heavy Samurai. Now, do keep in mind that there are multiple variations of things that people are going to try to do with this deck. I mean, you have the FTK version, which we will cover in another video because it did find success out here, which very cool. But this is probably going to be your most degenerate version of the deck, where, being able to toggle out the Cyberstein with the Exterio to laugh at your opponent. And then, you don't even really need power cards. Now, if I believe one of these Super Heavy Samurai lists that I've acquired, they didn't have time to put together a sideboard. So, when they plowed through a majority of the tournament, that was something that they didn't really have to worry about all day. So I think that's kind of cool and interesting to see, this deck not having a sideboard does kind of prove, how good its level power is. Thank you, Exterio. You're an incredibly busted card. So we have triple copies of Ash, Blossom, and Joyspring. We have one Chaos Hunter because, being able to laugh at your opponent with this is pretty good. We have one Cyberstein, triple copies of Droll Knockber with triple Effect Veiler. We have triple copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, triple copies of Nibiru, triple copies of Gamma with triple copies of the Bike, 2 copies of the Big Benki, and then, of course, triple copies of Prodigy Wakashi, 1 copy of the Scales with 1 Soul Claw, now 1 copy of the Soul Gaia Booster with 1 Soul Peacemaker, and then, of course, triple Soul Piercer, the triple copies of the Wagon, 1 Regulus, and 1 Driver. And then, of course, we have triple copies of the Scarecrow, 1 Genius with 1 Unicorn, we got 1 Apollosa with 1 Access Code, we have 1 Baguski, 1 Search for Dear Old Make Exterio, yep, that's good, and the 1 Abyss Dweller with your 1 copy of the General Chanel, we actually make that, okay, 1 Borreload, 1 Baron, 1 Excel Synchro, and 1 copy of Exterio here, wrapping up your power cards. Next list here, hey, it's Purrely, sporting off the power of the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation, and now with 300% more draw power. This deck is going to be a pretty scary thing that I think a lot of people are going to underestimate kind of going forward here. You do need to be aware that this sets the precedence to allow you to draw a card while it's underneath your monster. Yeah, that's a thing. Also, the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation stuff gives you a lot of good draw fodder here. And I also see that they were prepared ahead of the meta here, the way it seems. And, of course, having these good cards in your side deck is very, very strong to laugh at your opponent. So we have triple copies of Ash, Blossom, and Joyspring. Got 1 Cobalt Eagle with triple copies of Droll Knockbird. We got triple copies of Purrely with your triple Purrely Lily. We got triple copies of Santa Claus with 2 copies of Crossout Designator. We got triple My Friend Purrely with triple copies of Delicious Memory. Triple copies of Happy Memory with triple copies of Pretty Memory. We have triple copies of Sleepy Memory with 2 copies of the Purrely Street. We have 1 Talents, 1 Imperm, 1 Leap, and then, of course, triple copies of the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation. Then we have 1 Anima with 1 Moon, 1 copy of Dahark with 1 Princess Sprite. Got 1 Assembled Nightingale with 2 copies of Nor, 2 copies of Plump, 1 Little Happiness, 2 Beauty, 1 Downward, and 2 copies of Zeus. And then we have 2 Ghost Ogre, 2 Nibiru with triple copies of Vanity Seat, triple copies of Cosmic Cyclone with 1 Feather Duster, 1 Herald of the Abyss, 1 Thrust, and of course 2 copies of Infinite Permanence here, wrapping up the power of this deck. Now, all things really considered here, these 2 new cards set a massive change going forward for this deck. I think a lot of people are going to be very, very surprised when they actually get the chance to play against this deck. What it's going to bring to the table, how much actually changes in the metagame because of this. And then we had 1 big old meanie head Cash Tier player that actually came through and smashed our sneak peek event, which actually, seeing Cash DRS still do its thing, not all that surprised. You'll definitely still tell that these 2 particular cards really do reinforce the deck in terms of extra deck stuff. And then, of course, Goliath being able to be tucked under. And then you have some immediate outs to things here as well. So, deck still remains a very strong competitor. So, we have triple copies of Ash, Blossom, and Joyspring. Triple copies of Fenrir with 1 Ogre. We have 2 copies of Rice Heart with triple Unicorn with 1 Scareclaw Cashier. We have 1 True Elements Cashier with 2 Book of Moon, 2 copies of Enemy Controller with triple Birth, triple copies of Theosis with 2 copies of Desires, triple copies of Pot of Prosperity with triple copies of Raceloth. We have 1 Terraforming with 2 Talents, triple Infinite Permanence, 1 Big Bang, and 1 Preparations. Then we have 1 Goliath with 1 Donner, 1 copy of Ender Bafnir, 1 Mind Hacker with 1 Big Eye, 2 copies of Shangri-La, triple copies of Arise Heart, 2 Zeus with 1 Dark Armed, 1 Garuda, and 1 copy of the good old Skull Wagon. And then you got the triple Ansia, 2 Shifter, triple Droll, 2 Herald of the Abyss, 1 Thrust, 2 Dimensional Barrier, and of course, 2 evenly matched, wrapping up your chunk of, well, metagame, I would say. This actually sets a pretty good precedence going forward to what you'll have an idea of what you're going to run into. And I think once you kind of have an idea of how the meta is going to look, it's going to be kind of interesting. So what do you guys think? Please, if you comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here later today, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.